All right, big news in New Zealand today is it seems like the uber wealthy, 311 I think it was, of the richest families in New Zealand were studied by IRD and have come out to be paying about, in total, once you add everything up, 9% tax on their earnings. Let's have a look at the story.
Now, you might like to be sitting down to hear this.
I am.
New research has found the wealthiest handful of Kiwi families are each worth an average of $276 million.
And they're effectively only paying half the tax of everyday Kiwis. The Revenue Minister says it shows in black and white that the tax system is unfair, but as political reporter Amelia Wade explains, he has no plans to fix it yet.
Wealth.
Oh,
We
Chewy,
all
there's our
mostly
delivery from
dream of
Jacinda.
it, but what is it?
If you've got hundreds or thousands left over at the end of the week, you're wealthy.
Having lots of disposable income.
I regard myself as wealthy in the sense that when I go to the supermarket, I don't have to worry about, being able to pay the bill when I get to the checkout.
Turns out the most minted among us have substantially more than a shopping trolley. Try a collective wealth of $85 billion.
This finding is truly groundbreaking.
Thanks to a law change, the tax department spent 2 years and $3.2 million investigating the financial affairs of the richest 311 families.
For the first time, we have hard data confirming fundamental unfairness in our tax system.
That unfairness is because most Kiwis are taxed on every dollar they earn, as well as paying GST. So middle-income New Zealand effectively pays 20.2% in tax. But these high-wealth families effectively pay just 9.4%. That's because they don't grow their wealth from income. Most of it is from other largely untaxable things like trusts, property and investments.
When I say most, I mean 93%.
I don't think that's okay. It's disgusting.
Looking at their properties alone, the wealthy families own almost 7,000.
The top 1% of households hold more than a quarter of all of the financial assets in New Zealand.
Let me just spell that out again. They said 311 families. 311 families own 7,000 properties. I haven't even done this yet, and I probably could do it in my head if I was a bit better. What is that? So we'll go 7,000, divided by 300. Yeah, so that's about 22 properties each of the families owns. So good, bad or indifferent, you can decide on that, but that's what the number is. And obviously some of them will own 5 properties and other ones will own 40, but it's a lot of properties amongst 300 families.
And the rich are really getting richer. In 2017, the families were worth $1 billion. In 2021, that was $14.6 billion. The opposition accusing Labour of planting a seed with the public about tax changes.
The top 2% of New Zealanders are paying about 26% of all our income tax, and I think that is entirely fair.
The government will use...
National's in a quandary here, because what you're finding, and we're going to play some clip from Mr. Luxon shortly, is National are basically now saying these top families have earned too much money, yet National is the party of the wealthy and uber wealthy, telling their supporters that they shouldn't be becoming wealthy or uber wealthy. And if you were a National Party and you came out and you said, well, the wealth of individuals has gone up by X amount of percent during our term, you'd probably celebrate that. But the wealth of the Labour during this Labour incumbent government, they've gone up by such a large amount, and National's trying to sell it as a bad thing. Now, it is a bad thing, but it's also National's bread and butter. So I think they're in a bit of a quandary here as to what to do. So what National is saying is Labour is better for the uber rich. Is that what they're saying? Because that's the outcome.
And I think that is entirely fair.
The government will use this report as part of a witch hunt, but witch hunts won't make us wealthier.
The government's research has outlined that they can do things differently, and this is their call to action.
The tax system is unfair. Do you have the courage to fix it?
This annoys me.
Yes.
Just not today.
But we have made it clear that we're not making significant tax changes today.
What annoys me is the big long pause.
Oh, and the grin.
Yeah, that annoyed me.
Didn't like the grin.
No, this has got about 60 seconds. Let's just play the end of it.
And probably not tomorrow either.
Well, Amelia joins.
Oh, that'll do. We don't need the commentary afterwards. Now, I'll show you what Luxon did. Now, this is a clip from what the Luxon was talking in that conversation. Except I sometimes think this is one of the things I like about hanging out with you guys and having as much time as we want, yeah? Because some of the more interesting things from his media scrum aren't shown in a 2-minute clip, right? Now, I'll read out to you what happens. You're not going to hear it very well because reporters, for some reason, don't put the mic to their own mouth. They only hold it out to him, so you can't hear him. 4 times in a row, Christopher Luxon is asked if he thinks that the tax system is fair. 4 times in a row by 2 different reporters. This isn't verbatim, but it's the basic question. The first question is, do you agree that the tax system is unfair? The second question is that tax system itself unfair? The third question is, the wealthiest 300 families pay 9% tax. Do you think that's fair? And the fourth question is, in terms that the wealthy pay half what the ordinary Kiwi pays, is that fair? Now, even if you don't hear the questions, you'll hear Luxon pausing. All 4 of these questions, he's asking, do you think the tax system is fair? At no point does he answer the question.
What I agree is that this government's been incredibly unfair on working
Is the tax
New
system
Zealanders
unfair?
because
That's
they've actually
not the
mismanaged the economy,
question.
created inflation, and caused huge amounts of pain and suffering.
Didn't create inflation.
And what
Is it unfair?
What I'd say to you is what is unfair is that this government has actually had policies that have inflated asset values where the wealthy have done incredibly well. If I compare and contrast the national
The next
period
one
in
is
government
the-
versus the Labor period in government,
Do you think
by
that the
virtue of their
wealthiest 300
economic
families
mismanagement, the printing of
paying
money,
9%
the
is fair?
spending of
That's the
money,
next question.
this is a government that is proportionally the second biggest spending government in the OECD. It's proportionally the 4th biggest printer of money in the OECD. And it restricted our economy and shut down our immigration centres like nothing else, spiked domestic inflation and created a huge asset class.
Talking
growth in
points.
asset class.
Talking-
So the wealthiest 300 families in the country pay about 9% tax versus median New Zealanders who pay about 20% tax.
Yeah.
To you, is that fair?
The top 2% of New Zealanders are paying about 26% of all our income tax, and I think that is entirely fair. We need to be in a place where this economy at the moment
We'll come
is
back to that.
crying out for investment and capital to grow the economy. But what's happening here? Be under no illusion. It's not the wealthy that are the problem here. The problem here is the government that had economic policies that led to a massive inflation in asset classes that are nominal. They haven't always.
And he
been
avoids the
realised,
question so
the
much
gains
that
only
another
been
reporter
realised
comes
when the
on
assets sold.
and says, like the last reporter was asking you, do you think it's fair? And he still doesn't answer it.
That's very different from how our national government ran things. When you have good economic management, you don't create a condition where that happens.
You keep blaming the government, but it was the. We hear you on that economic management points, but back to Amelia's question.
Back to Amelia's
this report was
question.
about the system, the tax system. So in terms of that disparity between the wealthiest paying half of what the ordinary Kiwi pays, is that fair?
What I'm just saying to you is the fairness. No, it's really grossly unfair that we've got a government that has mismanaged the economy so badly.
God's sake,
that we've actually
man.
created
Anyway,
these-
we'll fade it out. So you get the idea. Now, I want to put something to bed, right? I nearly made the worst joke in the world. And the idea that the top 2% pay 20%, 26% of the tax. Let's make this really clear, right? I've said this before on the show and I'll say it again. If I make $1 million a year and Chewy makes $100,000 a year, good money, great. And let's not even say that. If Chewy makes $40,000 a year and I make $1 million a year and I pay 20% of my tax, so I'm left with $800,000, and Chewy pays 10% of his tax and he's left with $36,000. Who is impacted more? Chewy is impacted more because he has less. I'm hardly impacted at all, but I've paid far more. So just because they pay more in the hat doesn't mean they're paying their fair share, because those who have less and perhaps put less in the pot but proportionally pay more are impacted worse. 20% out of a pension is $28,000 impacts them a lot more than 40% out of a millionaire's salary. So when you hear people like Luxon say the top 2% pay 26% of the tax, it's a bait and switch to say they put more in the pot, but they put less proportionally compared to what they earn in the pot, even though it's more financially, if that makes sense. Really important to remember.
I've got a solution.
Nationalise it?
I love
That's not what
solving
you say.
problems. No, that's my solution.
What? Let them eat cake?
Guillotine time. No, it's enormously frustrating to see Luxon completely dodge the question. 3, well 2. B, did I say A or 1? I don't know.
Part F.
I'm so fizzing at the moment. It's just throwing out bullshit left and right like they're smoke grenades to try and duck being pinned down on this issue. And then just apparently demonstrating a complete lack of understanding about how inflation works and what got this country into the position with these dragons sitting on accumulated piles of gold going, no, daddy, don't tax me. And I'll tell you, every government since the late 80s has put a brick in this wall. When they redid the tax in the late 80s, they dropped the top tax rate from 66% to 33%. They got rid of a land tax. And at that point, everyone went, well, we don't have a capital gains tax. We don't have a land tax. Then buying property is tax-free. So that's what I'm going to do with my money. So if you wanted to grow your money, you start gobbling up houses about the same time that a national government is selling off state-owned assets and state-owned houses. You start hoarding up properties that the country built for you. And then you make your money by buying and selling houses amongst yourselves and producing nothing. Like people in New Zealand, the rich, most of them don't invest in productive assets like businesses or that sort of thing. They'll invest in property because it's safe and there are no tax considerations. Go hard. Hoard up 7,000 properties over a decade of a housing shortage. What absolute ghouls. And the fact that Luxon cannot see that or will not admit it is infuriating because it means that he has no way of solving this.
Yeah, it's fair. What you're saying is fair. I'm just reminded as well, and I'm having a look for something while I'm talking to you, so I might be a little bit distracted here. I'm reminded of speaking to Don Brash about becoming the Prime Minister, and I remember talking to Don Brash. I'm gonna see if I can find it. I'm just looking at my SoundCloud to see if it's up there. No, that's not that one.
Or just while you're looking.
Yeah. I can't see the screen, by the way, so if you want to do something.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
What have you done? Well, do I have to come over and check
nothing.
on you?
No, you just carry on with your life. That's fine.
I do have it here. This is an old, I wonder if I can do this. I wonder if I can find it. This is probably
now, for I do it for you in the chat, Labour are no different. That's pretty much exactly what I said. Is that both major parties have built this up over the last 40 years. They've all had recommendations. They've all had people look at the tax code and where people are funneling their money. You can't say that either one of them didn't know. National didn't want to do it because they'd hurt their friends or their own portfolios. Labour didn't want to do it because they didn't have the bollocks to do it when they had the ability.
Which is why when David Parker laughs, I'm like, fucking hell.
That's why I got angry.
The answer is yes, we're going to fix this, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But here's what I was trying to find. I found it, but I have to log in to get access to my own audio, so I'm not going to do that. I spoke to Don Brash, whatever it was, 2008, and I said to him, and the thing that reminds me of this is Mr. Luxon has said this in the last month. Don Brash said the same thing. It's a job interview, and I'll find out at the end of the year if I get hired for the job. And I played Don Brash the audio of him talking to Duncan Garner about sending troops into probably Afghanistan. And Duncan Garner asked 4 times, but Mr. Brash, would you have sent troops into? And the response was, this is a diversionary tactic. And so I sat in front of Don Brash and I said to him, you've said that this is a job interview. And he said, yes. I said, explain to me how in a job interview you can choose not to answer questions. If I go to a job interview working for JB Hi-Fi and they say, how good are you on the till? This is a diversionary question. It's not relevant to the job I've got at hand. It's like in a job, and if we ever get Mr. Lux, which I don't think we will, but if we do, I will use this clip and I will say to him exactly the same question. How can you expect to get a job when you're not answering questions in the interview process? You've chosen not to answer questions. You yourself have said this is a job interview. You've used that term. You're getting asked questions and you're not answering them. How can you expect to get a job when you don't answer the questions that are coming to you for that job? Now, what can we do? Chewy wants to have a guillotine. We've had this before. Look at that beautiful look at that little fella. Look at that little fella just there. Beautiful little fella hanging out with us. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but we did this last year in quite depth. You can go find it for yourself. When tax breaks for everyone leads to some paying more tax, tax-free thresholds explained. This is a very basic example based on the Australian system that if we made it tax-free for under $14,000, this is the current tax system in New Zealand up the top here, 14,034, so it goes 14,000, the next band is 34, the next band is 22, the next band is 110. This is the bands up here. And if you made the tax-free on the first $14,000 and you increase the rate on the following bands, which is what Australia's done, and these bands are based on the Australian model, people who are, this is about the pension, 28,000, they'd be like $1,400 a year better off, $30 a week. You know, people on $50,000 would be about the same. They're around $1,000 better off. People on 100,000 would be paying a bit more, and the tipping point for that kind of system is for the system that I propose is $80,000. So in the current tax system, if you're paying, and that doesn't include working for families, that doesn't include family tax credit, it's purely PAYE. The current tax system, if you're doing $80,000, doesn't include student loans, you pay $17,320. On the proposed new system, my proposed system, on $80,000 you'll be earning $17,310. That means everyone under $80,000 would have more in their pocket. The squeezed middle, Mr. Luxon, for the cost of living crisis, and everyone above it would start paying a little bit more by a little bit more by a little bit more. As you can see here, if you were earning $300,000 under the current system, just PAYE, $97,000, under the new system, $108,000. That would be the system that I would suggest. We've done it before, and that would be a way that you could do it.
Before? The country Australia? That we're always compared to, Australia. Yeah.
That everyone's now going to move to
where things are better and people earn more money and that sort of thing.
So
why do we look to the Australians for fucking stupid ideas and we don't get this one? It's infuriating.
That's
right?
an idea.
Whenever these guys talk about tax, it's like they forget that we have a progressive tax system for a start. They love to trail that out there, that if you're in a different tax bracket, people absolutely don't understand what that means. You know, it's the illiteracy. It's the what did I say? The intellectual dishonesty that makes me really, really angry. And this is something that could make quite a big difference into a lot of people's lives, and make the tax system more progressive, and get the money that we need to get to keep things like the luxuries in this country, like hospitals and schools and such. You know. When everybody looks to the good old days, they never look at the tax rate, right?
Yeah, that's true. They just look at separate water drinking fountains. That's the great times, wasn't it? Separate drinking fountains.
Like in the States, they're always going, oh, look, remember when America was great and we had a massive navy and we could fight 2 wars at once. We went to the moon at the same time. And you go, well, what was your tax rate at that point?
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, you were taxing millionaires at 80%. That's why you were able to do it.
So this is what's probably, I reckon, is going to happen. There will be a pretty massive announcement from Labor. I don't know what. I wouldn't be surprised if there was capital gains tax. And capital gains tax is not going to be a winner for Labor, because there are a lot of Labor voters who won't be that interested in it. But could be. But the I keep saying interest-free, the tax-free band could be announced, and what they'd be saying is, and it will be introduced budget 2024. In other words, if you want it, you better put us back in.